Well, hey, good evening, everybody. Once again, I want to say thank you all for joining us on this Tuesday night family and friends Bible study. We do this every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. So wherever you are in the world, just know that you are welcome to join us. Listen, we are in the middle, well, we're actually at the beginning of a brand new series. It's called Satan, DOA, and that will be live. Well, it'll be showing every Monday night at 7 p.m. I want to encourage you to check that out. You can see it on the Kingdom Learning Center on the Facebook page. And the reason why I believe it's necessary for you to see this message and to really take part in this teaching is ultimately, listen, y'all, we give Satan a lot of credit, I don't know any other place in the world that we focus on a loser. In sports, you don't focus on the loser, you focus on the winner. But we have been duped into really believing a lot of things about the adversary. So Dr. Tim Williams of Words of Life Teaching Ministries, listen, powerful teaching. It's a 7-part series. And once again, I would highly encourage you to check that out on Monday nights at 7 p.m. right on our Facebook channel. So listen, I want to encourage you all, if you didn't catch last week's message, to check it out. It was entitled "The Press Is On." And so I'm going to do a quick recap. Hopefully I'll do it some justice, but nevertheless, I still want to encourage you to, in your free time, to view that message, to kind of see where we're at as it relates to the teachings that we're going forward with. One of the things that we highlighted last week in the message, "The Press Is On," it actually tracks Jesus's experience in the Garden of Gethsemane. And we talked about the Gethsemane. It actually means the press. And so he was in the olive press. And so hence the title, "The Press Is On," coming from that. But there were a few things that we highlighted as it relates to Jesus's experience in this Garden of Gethsemane. We're often taught that Jesus died on the cross on Calvary, which is true. But what we talked about last week is that he actually died in Gethsemane. It was his body that caught up in Calvary. And what he died, this dying experience, was he actually died to himself. And so it can be inferred through the text that, this is something that Jesus is doing progressively as it relates to this dying process. The word says that he goes to the Father in prayer 3 times. And he says, not my will, but thy will be done. And he says this to the Father, once again, 3 separate occasions. And so we talked about the soul, right? We said that ultimately what was going on is we were getting a glimpse of what was taking place in his soul. And so he was making his soul subject to his spirit. We discussed that the soul is the emotions, it's the mind, and it's the will of an individual. And so we see Jesus being sorrowful, which is the emotions. He was looking for another way, which speaks to the mind. He was trying to find another solution. And then ultimately, this is what he says: not my will, it's not my personal desire, but I'm going to yield my desire to the Father. And so we related that message to also Matthew 16, when Jesus tells his disciples, he says, you know what? You're going to have to deny yourself and take up your own cross. Okay. And so this is something that we all, as believers, at some point in time, we're going to have to kind of have this internal conversation within ourselves as it relates to the things that the Father is calling us to. And so tonight, I'm not going to belabor the process, but there's some things I definitely want to share with this group. For those who are joining us on social media, I want to say thank you for joining us. And once again, to everybody in our Zoom community, thank you for joining tonight. Tonight, we're going to be coming from, looks like Proverbs chapter 4. I'm going to read 3 verses over there, or 4 verses, excuse me. And then we're going to jump over to Luke chapter 10. And so in Proverbs, we're going to read verses 20 through through 23. That's Proverbs 4:20 through 23. And then we're going to jump over to Luke chapter 10, starting at verse 38, and we're going to read down to 42. Moving forward, the word, this is the New King James Version from Proverbs 4, and it says, "My son, give attention to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life." I'm actually going to read that verse in the Amplified version. This is verse 23. It says, "Keep and guard your heart with all vigilance, and above all that you guard, for out of it flows the spring of life." Jumping over to Luke chapter 10. Once again, that is verse 38 through 42. And it reads, "Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she said she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus's feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore, tell her to help me.' And Jesus answered and said to her, 'Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her.'" Tonight, for those who are taking notes, I've titled this message, "Guard Your Heart." Once again, guard your heart. Listen, for all transparency, as a personal disclaimer, I want to say that Dexter Peggins Jr. personally, I find myself in a very interesting season of my life right now. There are some things that, are going on that, aren't comfortable, but I know it to be necessary. I believe it to be par course for where the Lord has me right now, and ultimately where I know that the Lord is taking me. The word says in John, it says that Jesus is he's the gardener, right? It relates him to the gardener, and it says that he prunes the branches. He cuts away certain things, and the reason why he does this cutting is to get a more desired and a more substantial fruit. And so, as a person who has a garden, I could tell you that when the things begin to grow and you begin to see the fruit, it's the fruit that's closest to the stalk that is always, more, pleasant looking, or, it's more of substance, as opposed to the ones that are hanging out there on the branch. And so, what happens is that you begin to cut away the things that are far away, so you can begin to, kind of direct all the nutrients towards the one that's closer to the stalk. And so the purpose of this is that why it might hurt, if you look at it from a physical standpoint, if you look at it from an emotional and a spiritual standpoint, it might hurt, but the aim of it is not to hurt you. The aim of God doing this pruning and cutting is so that he can get the harvest that he wants. And so, I find myself in the season where I'm like, God, that hurts, but I know why you're doing it. And so, it's causing me to ask certain questions in my prayer time. And so I want to share with you some wisdom that the Lord has really been expounding upon me in this particular season. And I believe that it will help you. It's certainly helping me, but it's helping me to frame my perspective and to look at things a little bit more differently than I may have looked at it in previous times in my life. I want to start this off by asking a question. And the first question that I will ask you is, what is the center of your focus? And so the first point is understand your focus. Where we pick up in Proverbs, The writer is encouraging his son to center himself on the way of wisdom. He tells him, to keep his sayings in the midst of his heart, because in doing so, he tells the son, you know what, you're going to find the way of life. You're going to find life as you hold on to this wisdom that I'm imparting into you. He also cautions his son to guard his heart, because he says out of it flows the issues of life. Now, I want to tell you that the heart that this text is talking about is not the heart that is beating in your literal chest. The heart that is talking about your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, why this is important, is because the subconscious mind reveals what you really believe. Proverbs 23:7, I believe it's the first part of that verse. It says something very interesting. It says that as a man think, so is he. One of the versions says it that way more specifically, but that speaks to the subconscious mind. If you think about it, as I think, so am I. We oftentimes we try to project certain things, but we don't believe it within the core of our very being. And so what you believe in the core of your being is actually what it is that you demonstrate and you show in the world. And so what the father is saying to his son is, you know what, you got to guard your heart, because there's things that are coming that are going to attempt to taint the way you believe as it relates to life. And so the writer is saying that, this guarding is not a passive guarding, but it's an aggressive one. It means to be actively watchful for the things that would attempt to break in. If you contrast that with the scripture that we're also using tonight from Luke, you will see what happens when a person is consumed with the issues of life. The text reveals that Martha invites Jesus into her home. There was a reason why I emphasized that point, that, she invites him into her house. She invites Jesus into her home, but because of the issues that have gripped her heart, her anxieties, her worries, she makes herself unable to get what she needs for her life. And what ultimately happens is that she is unable to recognize the moment. So Jesus is saying, no, your sister is doing what she's supposed to do. But because you're so consumed with everything, you're missing out on where you're supposed to be yourself. The second point that I want you to write down, if you're taking notes, is take courage. And I'm talking about some of the wisdom that the Lord has been speaking to me in my time of prayer in this season. And keep in mind, for those who are, new to following our ministry, or just kind of hearing this theme for the first time, we've been talking about being in sync with God since the beginning of the year. Take courage. Now, I want to caveat that by saying this is something that the Lord also shared with me. He said, fear is a persuasive language. Fear is a persuasive language. This is what happened. Martha, she tried to get Jesus to endorse her position by having him tell Mary to leave his presence and join her confusion. So ultimately, she was trying to persuade him to get Mary out of position to join into her own personal confusion. And what I want to tell you is that if you have peace, you better hold on to it. No matter how persuasive it sounds, don't be swayed by the message of fear. The reason why I say take courage, and I want to read this really quickly. This is Joshua chapter 1, verse 7 through 9, very familiar scripture for those of us who like the Old Testament, I guess. But this is Joshua 1, chapter 1, verse 7 through 9. It says, only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do all according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You know, there are times when we attempt to use our own logic, right? You know, and here's the significant thing. You know, God will tell you to do something that's contrary to the wisdom of man. And the wisdom of man is rooted in a logic that is processed by the world system. Now, we've talked about this world system before. We said that our world system is governed by death. You know, once again, when humanity fell in the garden, they became fearful of death. And so what they would do is they implemented things that protected them to the best that it could from death. And so our whole system and culture is based upon that mindset. And so God will begin to speak things that are opposed in some instances to the logic of man. But what he's saying is that you have to yourself take courage in doing that. Last week, we mentioned that Jesus was looking for another way. He logically wanted to produce a solution that could offer the same results without going through the required process. And that was the whole battle for not my will, but your will be done. See, Jesus, he was trying to rationalize, you know what, can I do this? Can I still get what you want while at the same time maintaining what I want? And ultimately, he came to the conclusion that not my will, but your will be done. So Jesus himself had to take courage. Now, I want to say this. There is a law that pertains to you. As God spoke to Joshua about the law that he should meditate on, Hebrews, and I want you to write this down. This is Hebrews 10:16. Hebrews says that the Lord will put his law into your hearts and mind. And so my encouragement to you is meditate on what the Lord has given you and take courage in that, because that speaks to the new covenant that we now operate under as believers. And so what is the word that God has hid in your heart? And are you taking courage in the fact that he is with you as you step out in what it is that he's called you to step out and step forward in? The third thing that I want to say, and I'm going to take my time with this point, but the third thing that I want to say is torment comes in the areas where faith is absent and love is underdeveloped. I'm going to say that one more time. Torment comes in the areas where faith is absent and love is underdeveloped. Jump with me to 1 John. This is chapter 4, verse 19. Actually, I'm gonna read verse. I'm gonna start at 17. This is 1 John 4, reading verse 17, and it says, "Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out all fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us." I'm going to read that, the end of verse 18, one more time. Actually, let me just read 18. "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love." In the text, we see Martha, and it says that she was troubled about much. And it's because even though Jesus was in the house, he was not the focus. She was troubled about much. Jesus was in her house, but he wasn't the focus. And I want you to see the parallel because Jesus, we invite him into our heart. But the issue is that oftentimes we still carry about the same worries and the same burden because he is not the focus. So he's there, but because we're so consumed with the issues of life, we don't know how to settle ourselves to get what we need, and we miss the moment. Isaiah 26:3, it says, "You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts you." This mind being stayed on you, that means that's a fixed position. I'm fixated on my focus being Jesus. And because I'm fixated on him, he's going to maintain this place of peace in my life. As long as he's the aim. The moment I begin to get caught up in the issues of life, then I become subject to what it is that the torment, what the issues are now saying to me. What you gonna do about your bills? Oh my God, this is gonna happen. The light's gonna get cut off, and X, Y, and Z. The doctor had gave you this negative report, and so I'm starting to focus on the external things, and then I leave the position of peace, and now the external things become the torment in my life. Because once again, torment comes in the areas where faith is absent and love is underdeveloped. My question to you, and we're going to be wrapping up here in a moment. If we've invited God into our hearts, then why don't we accept the benefits that come with the invitation? If we've invited God into our hearts, then why don't we accept the benefits that come with the invitation? Once again, we see Martha. Jesus is in her home. She has the pool with him that he comes into her house. And not only is he just there, but he's pouring, because obviously something powerful is happening, because it made Mary, who herself had the similar position as Martha, whether you be catering or hospitality or whatever, she was in that space as well. But she knew that, I need to pause because something is happening. But what happens for us is that we miss out on what it is that God is wanting to do, what it is that God is doing in the moment. And then the issues keep us fixated. And then what drives us is we're saying, God, I'm serving you, though. I'm serving you. This is what Martha was saying. God, I'm trying to serve you. But the moment that she was missing and that she missed out it wasn't that Jesus wanted her to serve him. He wanted to serve her. And so my question to you is, are you slowing yourself down long enough to allow God to serve you? Because once again, we're talking about guarding your heart. These are some of the issues, the things that we fight against that are attempting to rob us of our focus on the Lord. I'll share this with you all as I'm getting ready to close this down. As we mature in Christ, we have to accept what comes along with the maturation process. And oftentimes we refuse to accept the grace that God has made available in the difficult moments. Because we talked about last week that the press is on. Listen, Jesus was at where he was supposed to be at. God, he was headed to the cross. There was no denying that he was where he was supposed to be at. But there was an available grace that he had to tap into. And so as we find ourselves in these difficult seasons, will you tap into the grace that is available for you? The last thing that I'll share with you, and then I'm wrapping it up, the Lord said, look for the grace. It doesn't mean that I'm minimizing the moment. It doesn't mean that what you're going through is not tough, but there's grace available. There's something that I want to show you, because when I said that I'm with you, that with you wasn't just, me observing and not me being an active participant. No, we're co-laborers. But in this moment, you have to trust in what I've made available to you. And so for all of you who may be hearing me, I want to encourage you with this. Tap into the grace that God has made available for you. Listen, I want to once again encourage you, if you have not had an opportunity to listen to the first episode of Satan Destroyed on Arrival. We do that every Monday. Well, we'll be doing that for the next 6 Mondays. I want to highly encourage you to give that lesson a message. The term worship, that's something that we need to really consider. Worship actually means to ascribe worth, value to something. And in many instances, I'm not calling us devil worshipers, but we ascribe a lot of worth to the adversary. And so I believe that teaching is going to debunk a lot of things that we hold in high regard as it relates to the adversary. There's a lot of convictions that we hold as it relates to the adversary. And ultimately, what he ends up doing is he is abusing your power against you. It's not his power, it's your power. And so that teaching does a masterful job with highlighting this. Listen, I also want to encourage those who are under the sound of my voice. If this message, and not only this message, if the teachings that you've been receiving as a result of our ministry, Kingdom Learning Center, has been a blessing to you, I want to encourage you to consider sowing into our ministry. Right now, you can do so by Cash App. It's $ Kingdom Learning. But a long story short, sow into the ministry. We are doing some awesome things in our community, and every dollar helps. And so every prayer helps as well. So I want to say thank you for those who have partnered with us, those who give on a regular basis. I thank God that he speaks to you that way, and that you would trust our ministry with your seed of love. With that being said, listen, if you want to be a part of what we're doing on the online, so we have a Zoom group that's going on simultaneously to what we're doing on social media. But during that Zoom group, we actually open the floor for questions and comments. And so, listen, we'll be in a whole nother conversation. So if you want to be a part of that, I want to ask that you would send us a message. You can DM us, and we'll get you the information as it pertains to how to be a part of that community. With that being said, thank you all for joining us on tonight. Look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.